Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. This podcast is presented by BetOnline. Football is back, and BetOnline is your number one information source for all your sports wagering with all the up-to-the-minute stats, news, scores, and matchup breakdowns. Get the latest game odds, spreads, and totals from the NFL and college football right at your fingertips with BetOnline's real-time updates, stats, news, and odds. From week 1 all the way to the college football playoff and the Super Bowl, BetOnline gives you the access to the best football promotions and contests available anywhere online. Head to betonline.ag today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Remember, use our promo code BELIEVE, that's B-L-E-A-V, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. State of State is presented by BetOnline, where the game starts. Also, State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out the latest Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise now. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. And if you're looking for the perfect beer for Penn State football season, we've got you covered with the State IPA. Special thanks to our friends at Funk Brewing for creating the best tailgate and game day beer for Nittany Lion fans. State IPA is available now at beer distributors, grocery stores, Funk's tap rooms, plus select bars and restaurants. Visit www.funkbrewing.com/beers/state-IPA to learn where and how you can get State IPA. Check out the link in the description of this podcast for more information. Must be 21 years or older to purchase. Please drink responsibly. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the post-game show. We are live following Penn State's victory over UMass by a score of 63-0. There's no surprise really in the final outcome of this game, but there's a lot of positives to take away for this Penn State football team. He's Justin King. I'm Tom Hannafin. Thank you all so much for joining us here on our YouTube channel, allowing everybody to kind of file in. We want to hear all your thoughts and comments. Any questions that you guys have, feel free to drop them in the comments section in the chat as well. And as well, the super chat function is enabled. So anything that you would like to donate to the channel helps us do more things like this. Your questions absolutely will be answered. Justin, overall, watching this game, despite the rain and the nastiness, how'd you feel about it?
Dominant performance. This is exactly what I think we were looking for against UMass, making explosive plays on different areas of the game, right? It's like the two punt returns from Daquan Hardy. Even with the turnover from Drew Aller, we saw some more explosive plays. A 63-0 victory. And again, getting the tight ends involved in the offensive game plan, I think showed more of the roundness, or talk about that balanced attack of what our passing game can look like. Another efficient performance from Drew Aller. And man, I think this is a great tune-up game, quote unquote, before Ohio State.
Yeah, all due respect to UMass. There were some things about this game that I think you and I were interested in seeing, whether or not UMass's skill position players on offense could be at least a good warm-up or a test for Penn State, and they passed that test with flying colors, as the broadcast team was talking about at length, obviously with Ohio State looming next week. Josh in the comments section agrees with you. Dominant, what a win. Sounds like something from a dad sitting on his couch. You know what I mean? Everybody enjoying this game. I want to come back to something that was on social media that, Penn State got out to, a quote, a slow start in the first quarter. And that's been, a bit of a theme, unfortunately, for most of the season for Penn State. But when you actually go back and look at it, I'm like, the first two drives were slow, and that was it. And honestly, how normal is that in college football, Justin?
It's extremely normal. If you watch across, the different games that come on throughout the day, no one really just starts off scoring big touchdowns at the very beginning of the game. It typically is a little like figuring out, or like a little chess match at the beginning to find a rhythm of the game, and then like the dominance of the team and the talent starts to shine through. But for a quarter, it's like any physical combat where you're like filling out your opponent and seeing what's going on. But I think they did a great job coming out today, and especially in the rain. You just talk about two quarterbacks for UMass, Taysom 25 yards, the backup 20 yards, 45 yards total passing. I mean, the type of dominant performance that you want to see against this type of team is exactly what we saw. So I mean, I didn't think of it as a slow start. I mean, going into halftime at 28-0.
Yeah, that's not
It's like
slow. Yeah.
it's just like a well-rounded, football game.
I agree. We want to start doing this regularly after these post-game shows, Justin, but you and I were texting this State of State's offensive and defensive players of the game for Penn State versus UMass. For me personally, it was Drew Aller, and granted, there were a lot of people on this offense that got involved and had really nice games, but I just think the way that Drew was in command from the very beginning to the point that he was taken out of the game, the passing game was under control. You could see there were some possibilities of potentially going downfield, those just throw it deep situations that Drew Aller thought about, or even had the chance to pull a trigger on a couple. One was dropped by Tyler Warren, but you got the touchdown with Theo Johnson. I just thought the way that Drew Aller commanded things, especially in the rain, and still does not have a turnover. I believe the stat read on the air is that he has the longest streak of attempts without an interception in 8 years in FBS. It's just crazy. But do you agree Drew Aller is the offensive player of the game?
Yes, I would agree. I would like to say maybe comeback player, because I think Katron set the tone coming back this week with the 6 carries or 9 carries for 68 yards. And I think that run where he kind of drug everybody, like 18-yard run, like this is his running style, kind of set up the rest of those efficient possession type passes that Drew Aller was throwing, especially when you get the tight ends playing. So definitely would say Drew Aller, but a close second would be Katron Allen for me.
I agree with that. And Nick Singleton, I thought, also was solid. The running backs were good. It was just good to see Katron healthy and back in the lineup. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the guys that have been banged up the last few weeks. Josh hopping back in the comment section. I haven't seen a game in a long time where the defensive line lived in the opponent's backfield like that. Incredible effort. I completely agree. The way the defensive line performed, and granted, they were blitzing heavily in the first half and beyond. And then after a while, it just wasn't even really necessary, Justin. It just seemed like the defensive ends, especially the tackles of UMass, were just overwhelmed. This seemed like just being overmatched, period. Just superior talent.
All around the board, right? Like you say, like the defensive line standing in the backfield. I mean, we talk about how football teams are built from the inside out, offensive, defensive line. I think this is a big jump from what we saw against Delaware at times, where it seemed like it was a little too even matched up front. And today we saw the dominance up front, whether it's from Dennis Sutton, or you see Adisa Isaac living in the backfield, Chop Robinson, even Devon Ellis had a great game having pressure up front. And I think that it doesn't stop the different teams from approaching Penn State, but I think it shores up the different areas of the defense that we had concerns about. Like, can they have explosive plays on offense? I think we saw that there's an ability there, even when you start working in the tight ends, having 2 healthy running backs back, and knowing that Drew also has the ability to make those big time throws down the field. And we have those weapons on the outside. But then also from the defensive standpoint, having just an opportunistic defense. Now you have Day as a punt return option where it's like a real threat. Like, so when that returned 2 punts in a game and like with a lot of speed, I think that's just seeing these different weapons and just their full totality of the team is very impressive, because we're talking about now 3 phases of football that looked above the line type of ball that's being played, and you get a 63-0 outcome. Feel good going into next week and just ready to go against the talent.
Feel fantastic. You kind of took the words right out of my mouth talking about Day, considering who our defensive player of the game is. My pick. Granted, he got involved on special teams and helped, add 14 points to this total because of 2 punt returns for touchdowns. I believe the first time that's happened in the Big Ten since 2013. That is a first in school history for Penn State. And it's the first punt return for a touchdown by a Penn State player since 2020, Jahan Dotson. So
wow.
We have talked about this for years, is that this special teams program just hasn't really done much. Jahan, yes, but Jahan, I think it's been proven he's a special talent. Not to say that there weren't special guys back there returning the ball, but When Stacy Collins was hired from Boise State, the mission was to get something out of the special teams unit. This was the first real explosion that what we got to see. But coming back to my point, I think defensive player of the game, I personally want to give it to Daquan Hardy. And I think he could have picked like 6 guys to give this to. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I'm in 100% agreement with the Daquan Hardy on defense. I mean, coming in, just understanding that nickel position, having sticky coverage throughout the whole game, and having 2 big punt returns. I mean, as a defensive back, you don't always get to get your hands on the ball. And then when he did, you get to make big plays and put points on the board. So, I mean, on top of that, and even just like fundamental football, I mean, he had nice plays where he's taking on blockers and forcing the runners to slow down and seeing the different pursuit, close on the ball. And then we talk about the speed of Penn State's defense. I mean, he embodies that. So I would definitely crown him as the defensive player of the game for State of State.
I agree with you. Chop Robinson and Adisa Isaac also, I think, are guys anybody could easily go out there and say, hey, they're defensive player of the game for Penn State. A question here in the comments section from appropriately named Chris from Penn State. I noticed the offense started taking some shots / risks. I think we might see them capitalize on their efforts in Columbus, obviously Penn State at Ohio State next weekend. What do you think, Justin?
When it comes down to taking advantage of, say that one more time.
I think Chris's question more so, notice the offense taking some more shots downfield, perhaps. So could we see them capitalize on that type of approach against Ohio State next weekend?
I think it's going to be more of keeping Drew within his frame of playing, right? Because not to say that you don't take chunk plays or you have that philosophy of going after there and trying to take the top off, but you're playing against Ohio State there who will also have athletes. So I think unless they find different matchups from that standpoint, I think we'll see more of like a type of game plan that we saw today, to be completely honest with you. And we really want to see on the other side limiting those big plays, because just as we've seen throughout the whole season, it's been of a home run to check down or home run to mid-tier type of attack. And even when we have attacked in more of a chunk type of plays, it's been designed plays in that intermediate 15 to 25 yard type of frame and letting the receivers kind of run around and do their thing. So to say that against Ohio State, I think you press it a little bit in terms of, hey, we have to throw the ball down the field a little bit, or just having the identity of stretching the field. But at the same time, I think the way that you're playing, or the formula that you use to get a 63-0 victory, is something that you want to recreate next week.
The one thing that jumped out to me, Justin, is that this is now 6 games we've gotten to see from Penn State. And yes, the competition level is going to significantly jump next week against Ohio State. You haven't seen anybody yet fill the box with 8, 9 defenders. And you talked about that in the offseason coming in. You're like, hey, against Penn State, I would load up the box and I would make them beat you at the pass. And it's been this, I don't know why that's not happened yet. I agree with your assessment, but most of the defensive alignment has been backing off and preventing the big play, perhaps out of respect for Drew Allar's arm. Do you expect to see that change next weekend against Ohio State?
Well, I think it's one. I think it changes. I think Ohio State's going to challenge Penn State, right? Whether it's sending more blitzes, manning up on the outside more, and I think the shots or the ability to take shots will be there. Now, it's another different thing. You're talking about a different defensive line. You're talking about a different pass rush. You're talking about different blitz package. You're talking about different defensive backs as well. So just the ability to play man coverage, that opens up the big play. So I mean, when it comes down to those type of opportunities, I think when you see one-on-one situations with Drew, I think he has the ability to make those big throws. So that's something that we should keep an eye on. And I would love to see, the one-on-one with Keandre. Hey, we're throwing it. And that's, I think we'll get a chance to see a little bit next week, because I don't believe Ohio State's going to be okay with, 5, 6, 7 man box if we're continuing to run the ball successfully. So I think it still starts with us establishing the run and having control of the offense and being able to pick our different quadrants of the field to attack.
Ohio State, maybe not. I agree with you, but Michigan, feel like they might give that a shot. Maryland, feel like that they might give that a shot as well. I do want to get to Josh's comment here about Cam Miller. Cam Miller had an impressive day. Someone different in the Penn State secondary every week. It seems like he shined against Illinois. He got a pick. Yeah, Cam Miller did look good. He got involved on special teams as well. He's somebody that we just don't get to talk about too much, Justin, simply because there are so many people in this secondary that contribute on a regular basis and just frankly are seeing more playing time right now. When you look at Cam Miller's game, what do you like? What can he be?
Lockdown you, man, but he's opportunistic defensive back. He has speed, he has good length, and he fits right in with the mold of defensive backs there, right? And he had a sack today. It's another thing that Penn State defensive backs are used very well in different situations. You have Daquan Hardy returning punts. You have a lockdown corner in Kalen. You see Johnny Dixon playing different positions, making plays different areas. You have Cam Miller rotating into the game and making plays in different areas. And then you have like a King Mack and younger guys and Keen Ellis pick six. And you just have a totality of guys and position flexibility that be able to make plays on the back end. And for Manny to draw up exotic blitzes and to be able to be benefactors of dominating defensive line, right? So I think with that, and you see from Cam is just another stable member of like lockdown you, to be completely honest, and just showing his worth and the productivity that he's and taking care of the opportunities that he gets when he gets on the field.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, his time will come. It will come.
Oh,
this isn't even really a question. Patrick, he just likes my haircut. So thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. I hope you're in a home or a location that has our beer State IPA, because if it doesn't, is that really a home? You know, do they really care about the show that much, right? Thank you, Patrick. Let's jump to Mark Stevenson. For Justin, what's it like as a defender to up that big game, big late, to be up that late? Oh my gosh, I can't talk. To be up that late, big in the game. Are you looking to tee off on people or stay assignment disciplined?
Interesting. I've never been in the game super late when the score is out of hand because I'm typically a part of the original crew.
See, Justin, when he got to campus, he's like, "Listen, I'm starting. I'm not playing if it's a blowout. I need my own. I need my own dorm. You know,
a little bit of that. But I would imagine that you want to stay disciplined to an extent, but you have to look for you're looking for opportunities to make a play. Because I mean, once you're up, there's no fear. But it's a little interesting when you're playing with a shutout, because if I would imagine coming in as a backup with a shutout, you don't want to give up anything. So there might be a little bit of hesitancy to play less disciplined because you don't want to take the zero off the scoreboard for the guys that really worked and got it there. Not to say that they're not working, but I think the shutout is a different thing that forces players to play a little more disciplined.
Well, you saw how Manny was there, especially in the third and fourth quarter. Like,
Hey.
he was pretty ticked off. Who was the defensive back who got the penalty when Keaton Ellis nearly had a pick six? It was
29. It was a bad penalty.
No, it wasn't a good penalty, obviously. Trying to find the jersey number. We got a lot of people got into the game.
29?
It was 29. It was Davion Collins, the transfer from Mississippi State. So he's still young, but that was not a great moment. Obviously, he's not gotten to play all that much. But
no, those are tough. I mean, especially when you take off a touchdown for one of the guys in the back in the room's stat book. I mean, you don't get a chance to party in the end zone too much. So, I mean, you take that off the board, you're going to have to get fined a little bit. Internal fine, not a real fine.
Yeah, some push-ups, some suicide runs. Here's a question from Joseph. Will we be able to keep Manny Diaz long-term?
Time will tell. The coaching carousel is coming up, but I mean, he has previous head coach experience. He's had success turning Miami around, even though it didn't end the way you wanted to it to end. Shutouts and the type of defense that he's putting up there, man, I think he'll be a prime target for a head coaching position. But I don't know. It's hard to say. Do we keep him long term? What's long term in college football anymore? This is the new age of college football, which is semi-pro. So what's long term? What's long term, Joseph? Can you give me that? What's long term?
That's a good question. Brent Pry had 9 years?
That's long term.
That's a really long time.
That's extreme. I remember he turned down some jobs earlier, so he could have been like 5 or 6 out of there. But yeah, what's long term?
For me,
3 more years? No.
For me, I think he's going to be too hot of a name on the market for him to stay. There's going to be a lot of opportunities thrown at him. I think he has all the potential in the world as a head coach. But at the same time, it does seem like he enjoys being in State College. He enjoys being a part of this program. He and James Franklin have a very good relationship. And you can speak to this. The difficulty of changing coaches is one thing for players, but another thing, Joseph jumped in here. He says 3. So, okay, so you're looking at like 5 years of Manny Diaz. Listen, I would kill for 5 years of Manny Diaz. But the fact that we went from Brent Pry to Manny Diaz and the defense, dare I say, got better, everybody else in the country is going to recognize that and try and grab this guy.
For sure. When you mentioned the comfort, I think it's real cool to see the context of being a head coach or whatever comes with being a head coach, and then seeing someone that's able to just kind of fall into their natural comfort zone of coaching defense. I mean, I think that's what we're I think witnessing from a Manny Diaz coming from a tumultuous type of situation in Miami as a head coach, all the different stressors that come with that. I mean, as a head coach, and then now it's just like, hey, we're just drawing up ball and drawing up blitzes and defenses. You see that clarity, and we're just like, we're just focused on, let's get shutouts. And I think that's a cool thing when you see head coaches then operate at coordinator positions, because I mean, some of them fall back in love with the game in a different way because you're more of a coach again. You're actually connected with the players. You get to talk to the players in a different way than you do when you're the head coach. Like when you're an assistant coach, not to say everybody's against the head coach, but like, like, all right, the head coach has different things to worry about.
Good cop, bad cop.
Good cop, bad cop. Exactly. So that when you're the DC, it's like, I'm the good cop again. And it's like putting up zeros and things of that nature. So I could see him getting comfortable in that role. So I think there would have to be a strong offer for him to get up out of Penn State, especially with the young talent that Penn State still has on the roster.
Completely agree. Emma getting involved here in the comment section. Wonderful name. We obviously dominated on both sides of the ball today, but we still have occasional lapses against the run game, especially in 3rd and long situations. Any concerns against Ohio State's rushing?
Not necessarily. I don't. I think you have the same concerns that you have about any type of rushing attack, and that's just playing sound defense. I did see the leaky runs in the second and third quarter. Was like, hey, what's that 12-yard run here? That could be a touchdown against a good team. But you just got to understand that happens in football from time to time. And I think these guys feel good and confident going into next week and to be able to stop the run early. And I mean, play this game on the perimeter. I think this leans in our favor. So I think we're good.
I feel good about that as well. To the question there, obviously, about what is Ohio State able to do running the football. The offensive line for Ohio State, I don't want to say that it's a bad offensive line. I just don't think they're necessarily built to run the football. Now, that being said, they have 3 outstanding running backs in Mayan Williams, Travion Henderson, and Trainum, who I got to see a little bit of his performance against Maryland. So I think they have the horses to do it. I just don't know if they have the blockers to necessarily pull it off. Now, we've talked about this since the offseason. How is the interior of Penn State's defensive line going to hold up against a really spectacular rushing attack? I don't know if you've really seen that. They got tested against, I'd say, West Virginia, a little bit against Illinois, and a little bit against Iowa. This will be different, but I don't think this is the best rushing attack Penn State will see all season. I think it will absolutely be Michigan, but at least what Ohio State's going to be able to do running the ball. The guys getting the ball, one thing, but if you talked about it with Nick Singleton, he's a guy, if you give him 4 to 5 yards to kind of ramp up, you're dead in the water. It's kind of my thought process for Ohio State's tailbacks watching them on tape.
Well, I mean, with that being the case, I just think the pressure or the penetration from the defensive line just the past 2 to 3 weeks of playing football has been increasingly better since the beginning of the season. And we just know that the talent that they have up front on defense is above the line. So like when we see that, I mean, it's still football, but I don't feel any angst about the running attack against Ohio State.
Josh hopping in the comments section here. Another Josh. Ohio State will throw the ball like they did against Georgia, obviously referencing last year. Granted, no CJ Stroud. I think it's been proven at this point Kyle McCord is a different quarterback than CJ Stroud. So we really don't necessarily know the best of Kyle McCord yet. So I think that's an outlier going into the game next week. And then Josh also getting involved here saying UMass was an overmatched team today. Completely agree with that point. Mark Stevenson, thank you. Love the Funk Brewery State IPA. That's very nice of you to say. Hopefully you're not sitting there drinking a Blue Stripe or whatever that is. Like the State IPA is where it's at, if you're a good person. Another Joshua getting involved here. The wide receivers didn't seem to be getting separation today. Do you guys think that's just because of the wet field or a more concerning trend against better competition?
Wet field for receivers, I gotta give them some credit there. That's a tough game. I mean, when we see short area quickness with more positional players like tight ends, we see them had some successful days, but I wouldn't put too much stock into what the receivers did. I mean, wet field is that's just tough.
It's tough. I mean, Tyler Warren had that one, I guess you would call it looked like a wheel route out of a bunch formation. So he was trying to curl down the sideline a little bit. And just
a little wet hands. Yeah.
Like some of these things, you're not, obviously the coach is going to be like, you got to catch the football, but the circumstances are what they are. I want to stay with this point about the wide receivers. So the overall stat line, Keandre Lambert-Smith, 6 catches for 30 yards. He was targeted 9 times. He did have 1 drop. Theo Johnson, 4 catches for 66 yards, 2 touchdowns, targeted 5 times, 1 drop. Harrison Wallace, great to see him back into the fold. 3 catches for 44 yards on 4 targets. Tyler Warren, 2 catches for 14 yards and a touchdown, 1 drop as well. And then Katron Allen, 1 reception for 8 yards. I understand Keandre Lambert-Smith led the team in total receptions. However, for me, watching this, Harrison Wallace looked like the better wide receiver today. Is Harrison Wallace the best wide receiver Penn State has?
Wow. I don't think I watched it from that frame of view. Just from that, with that question in my mind. But what Keandre has done, I mean, just from a big playability, knowing that he can do that, that always gives me him still the slight number 1 because he's kind of proven himself. But with that being said, Trey had a nice game in terms of just productivity and like route running, and when he seems to constantly create separation. He had a fumble earlier today where I messed up our turnover margin there, but let me get back to you after the next couple of games, and I'll answer that if he's the best one. That I can't just go straight off of that. I don't think.
No, I get that,
but like that's a valid question though.
It's obviously it's in the eye of the beholder to a degree. I just saw Trey getting separation today, and that's something this receiving core is really struggling with. And unless it's a tight end in a superior matchup, potentially on a linebacker that can't run with them, or a corner that's undersized, those are the situations you've seen Penn State win those matchups, get separation. But Keandre, Cephas, we didn't see much of Malik McClain today. We didn't really see much of Dante Cephas. He got out there a little bit. Yeah, like you and I discussed it on this past week's episode previewing this game, is it's like the entire room needs to step up. And to me, there were flashes from Trey there early where I was like, maybe we've been thinking there's a Batman and Robin type of dynamic between Keandre and Harrison, and somehow that Harrison Wallace is Robin in all this. And this was the first game where I watched the way he was getting separation. I'm like, it's possible I've had this wrong.
It's fair, because like I had multiple thoughts today. Was like, he looked good right there. Oh, so, he's showing himself, like he's showing up in the game where it's like he's an impact player, and I didn't even think about that, because I think in my head I just had, hey, number one's the number 1 guy, and these are the different type of routes. And when you treat the number 1 person, sometimes the defensive game plan is to eliminate them, and the number 2 guy has more one-on-one opportunities where he's able to create separation, and the payoff is a little greater. So now that I'm looking at him as the frame as the number 1 receiver, I'm gonna tie it in a little bit tighter.
Yeah, just something to think.
No, that's a great question. I think that's something I think that's pretty cool to even bring up in the middle of the season, to be completely honest with you, because I haven't even heard anything posed of that, like in that vein, right? Of anybody even challenging Keandre as the number 1 guy. But I think that's a valid point after 5 weeks of play, 6 weeks of play.
You like to say it, iron sharpens iron, competition is king. Chris, another question here in the chat. I know it's UMass, but what stood out to you in today's game that you hope to see more of next week against Ohio State? I'd like to see the defense keep rolling. We're going to
I
need
was
it.
going to specifically the defensive pressure. Like that's what I would love to continue to see from the running defense, where it's just like constant penetration up front, and then on the passing plays, no clean pockets throughout the whole game. Just putting fear, even if they're not hitting the quarterbacks. If the quarterbacks feeling temperature and pressure from a decent DDS and then got chopped, just continue to cause havoc. Like to see the linebackers get more involved in the blitzes. I think we see a really cool defensive approach, and let's not take it for granted with Manny, the way he's calling the defense is seeing corners blitzing, seeing guys coming from all over the place, different Rambo type fronts where it's like 8 guys standing up, and it's just very unique. And when we can get pressure and productivity from the front four without all the different exotic things going on, I think that's something that really can catapult us forward and separate us against these next teams coming up like Ohio State, Michigan, and so forth.
6 sacks, 14 tackles for loss, and a pick today. It just continues on the trend. Again, it's UMass. We've said that until we're blue in the face, so we understand it's a different level of competition next week, but still the production has been outstanding. A comment here from Josh Bazon. Wide receivers need to have a better game next weekend against the Buckeyes. Ohio State's D is remarkably better than last year. I will agree that their pass rush is certainly improved, which is scary considering the way JT Tuimoloau really destroyed Penn State last year almost single-handedly. Their front seven is excellent. I don't know if I'm completely in love with their defensive backfield the same way I am with Penn State's, and I'm biased, but I think Penn State's, I would give them the edge in that respect. But I don't know if anybody's looking at Ohio State as some defensive juggernaut necessarily. I don't want to make that mistake, and that's not what I'm gleaning from your comment there, Josh. But I think there's going to be elements within the tackle box that Penn State's going to have some challenges next week against Ohio State, and that's why you play the games. Ben getting involved here in the chat. Thank you very much. Has our offense shown enough to be competitive against Ohio State? Where do you think we still need to improve?
Where do we still need to improve? I would say consistent big plays on the outside. When we talk about the receivers, I think just seeing more of what we saw from Trey Wallace today, more from Keandre Lambert, and just like an uptick from those guys. I think we saw that increase of productivity from the tight ends. That's continuing to be increasingly valuable. And just like, I hate to say it, but like the elite game management from Drew Aller. And with that, coupled with the running backs running style and the way that they've been picking up yards, I mean, even from today, K-Tron's 7 yards a carry, Nick 5, like that makes it tough and opens up the playbook. And those long play sheets that you see offensive coordinators using on the sidelines, that gives them the ability to use all of it when they're, gaining 5-6 yards a carry. So just making sure to take care of that. I mean, that's what we like to see moving forward.
Considering the yards per carry was around 3.8 coming into this game. Again, it's UMass.
Still, you gotta execute. You gotta execute to get some confidence to be able to execute later.
Joshua, again, in the comments section, we tend to start a little slow on offense. Anything James and the coaching staff can do to address these first quarter offensive woes. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, and really the first quarter offensive woes account to the first 2 drives were, stalled. And then after that, it was just a boulder going downhill for this offense for Penn State. But, we talked about it. Yeah, it's obviously been something they've been concerned about through the season and trying to get off to a faster start. What do you think? How can they possibly fix that?
I mean, again, this was Drew's 6th game starting. I think they're getting faster. Let's put it that way. Like if they were getting slower, I would understand. I guess the only thing I would say is like, if they're somewhere in the first scripted 5 plays, that there's just a dedication to chunk plays, right? Like where it's like, hey, we're just going to let it rip, not just throw it deep, but like design plays for 16 to 25 yards. We're having the philosophy of, I can't think of Bruce Arians, chuck it or can't risk it with no biscuit.
Oh yeah,
no biscuit without risking it or something. But like that type of philosophy moving forward. I mean, but beyond that, we keep raving about the interceptions. I mean, that might be a little bit of mental trickery when we talk about just keeping things in tight and not messing that up either.
Here's my follow-up question to you. Is Mike Yursich scripting the first couple of drives to probe or to attack?
When it's when you think about it's almost like a boxing match, but I think it's more of a probe. Like, okay, where are we going to attack the rest of this game? Because they have the ability to attack in a lot of different places, right? So you would think of the running attack as the jab, jab, jab. Then it's like, oh, here's a little hook with the tight end, slip screen. Okay, oh, but just not too many haymakers because people understand that we're just keeping the jab out there, so people are a little protected. So, like, I like to look at the offense and defense like a boxing match to an extent of how they're approaching it from an offense and defensive standpoint. But I think Mike Yursich goes at it from that type of standpoint. Like, okay, what are they giving us? Where are the matchups that we're winning? Who's on today? Because like we talk about the different weapons across the board, and let's attack the hot hand. And as we continue to do that, I mean, I think it's hard for defenses to game plan against you, especially like before the game starts, right? Like it's like just how the flow of the game goes. But yes, I would say he's definitely probing out the defense the first couple series.
Which I don't have a problem with. I'm very okay with that. He's figuring out what they're going to give him, and then it's just take the rest of the game.
And that's why I don't think they come out moving slow. Like that was like the main point where it's just like there's some reason to the madness of the start of the games. It's not just turnovers or like just put or putt and just doing nothing. It's actually moving and okay, let's try this. That doesn't work. Now let's attack them this way.
And the truth of the matter is that if you give up a touchdown or scores on the first two drives as a defense, you made some real mistakes in the way that you evaluated the game. You made some real mistakes in the way that you evaluated the opponent, that you didn't respect them properly. Just about every defense that Penn State has faced, we've talked about, it's been essentially the same type of defensive alignment that they've come up against. Guys playing back, trying to prevent the explosive play. So it's like, okay, this is what you're going to do. We're just going to take this underneath. And they racked up 63 points on Massachusetts. So it just took a matter of time. But you have to understand that for you to score on the first couple of drives, the other team has to make mistakes. So it's a credit to the competition that Penn State has played thus far. And yes, have they played world beaters to this point? Absolutely not. But giving a little bit of respect to those guys, that was like, yeah, if you come out on the first play and you chuck it deep, somebody really screwed up on the other side of the ball. And that's just not been the case. You talked about Don Brown, the head coach for UMass, been around the block, not a bad head football coach, not a bad football coach, period. So he clearly had his guys prepared for this game as much as he could. The score doesn't indicate it, but at least came out there swinging in the first quarter. A question here from Joseph. Why do they run Pribula so much? If he is the backup, why not provide him with some passing reps? To date, he is 6 of 13 in 5 games. He had the touchdown pass to Trey Potts there at the end of the Northwestern game. Situational football, that would be kind of my guess, Justin.
I was thinking that. I mean, there's a level of situational football when you're up by 50 points, and you want to keep your backups in a position where they're most comfortable. I mean, one of his skill sets is being able to be a mobile quarterback, being able to run, having some speed, and different things of that nature. So you just want to keep him in the vein of where he's comfortable. And at the same time, when you're up by 50 points, you do not want to just be spreading the ball around and just like tossing it like you're like Hawaii in the early 2000s. But I think they stick to the script of like how he plays quarterback and where he can be most effective and get the plays where he's been practicing in practice. But he's been going through during practice.
He's been repping in practice. There you go.
Repping in practice, yeah.
Chris, just thank you for the comment. Thank you for all the coverage. Thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate it. Another question here from Josh Bazan. What does Penn State need to do than to get the long running plays, better blocking from the wide receivers and tight ends? I think the back end of that was more of a statement. I thought you actually today, Justin, you saw a bit of a revolving door at offensive line by as early as the end of the second quarter. There are a lot of different faces that got out there. What do you think? What's going to be the trick?
The trick to getting long runs, I mean, it depends on for like you said, Nick Singleton's our home run running back. So for him, I think there's a level of getting to the second level in a little bit of cleaner stance. I think he had some ability today or some areas, if it wasn't a wet field, where we might have seen some of those type of situations today. I think when we see Katron Allen, I think his big time plays are those 20 to 50 yard type of plays just based on his ability. And they're entertaining and they're very effective as well. But when it comes down to that, I think there's just level of having clean blockings for Nick to get to the second level to have some room to make things happen. I really don't believe he's been missing runs or there's long runs out there that he hasn't had the ability to take advantage of. He's been catching the ball at the backfield in an effective way, in an efficient manner. And again, they've been positive in their yardage, yards per carry this whole season. So I think it's just a matter of time. And again, when we have this many weapons across the board, sometimes you're just going to get your chunk plays from different areas.
Agreed. Derek getting involved in here, more of a statement than a question. Everyone on here still afraid of Ohio State. Michigan fans are delusional and only talk about Ohio State. That team lives in y'all head rent free. Penn State is good enough to deal with both. Derek, I like the confidence. I like the aggression, and I like the confidence in this. I think Penn State just has a better matchup with Ohio State in terms of personnel than they do with Michigan. But Justin, how do you feel about that?
I feel what Derek's talking about. I mean, everyone's still afraid of Ohio State. I mean, because like when you just watch across the landscape of college football, I mean, Penn State is a complete football team. And like no one's just blowing teams out of the water. No one just looks that dominant. Like Penn State does look like the most complete team in the United States or in college football right now. And with that being said, they match up better with Ohio State than I think with Michigan, just on different areas. But with that being said, like they have the personnel to play with both of them on any given Saturday. And that's something that I've been harping on and not taking too serious about those two different type of teams, because there is no mystique to playing them when you're looking at a national championship or getting to the playoffs. So with that being said, I was second what Derek is saying, because we're the ones applying the pressure, not really feeling it.
Another question here from Chris. We kind of answered the first part of his question, but the second part, what is one thing that we need to work on before going to Columbus next week, and why?
What's one thing to work on next week? I mean, you can work on a lot of things when it comes to football, but one thing, I mean, I would just go back to receivers, right? Explosive plays on the outside.
I agree. They continue
explosive plays on the outside.
Yeah. Some other comments here. Ben, unfortunately, we haven't won a game versus Ohio State since 2016. Yes, that does. Obviously, listen, this is basically a 3-team league, and some would argue it's a 2-team league. So it's a matter of beating those top 2 this year for Penn State.
Can't obsess over it, though.
Mm-hmm. For this week, we will. But
this week we will. Yes.
Mr. Supreme saying they have more to prove against Michigan than Ohio State.
I kind of agree.
I think I agree. And at the end of the day, if you beat one or both of them, you've proven something. That's the important thing. And then there's a really hard-hitting question here from Patrick. Who would win in a 40-yard dash, Justin in Crocs or Tom in running shoes? I think Justin in the Crocs would have me. I think if we tied cinder blocks to Justin's feet, he'd still beat me in a 40-yard dash.
Do I get the straps? Do I get the sports straps, or do I have to wear them? Like,
I'll get you a title belt from Impact Wrestling, and you will win that very, very easily.
If I get to strap them up, I might be able to get you. If I get strap,
we'll get you taken care of. I want to thank everybody so much for hopping in the comments section. We got to do this last time for Northwestern. We're so excited we got to do this here for this game after UMass. And yes, it was a low-level FBS opponent, but Penn State just looked very, very sharp today despite bad weather conditions. Kudos to all of you that braved the weather and actually went to the game and then are tuning in for this after. We sincerely appreciate it. Justin, final thoughts on this before Ohio State next week?
Great tune-up game before big noon kickoff next week in Columbus.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you all so much for joining us. Like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going to have a full preview episode for you coming this Wednesday morning, and then it'll be Penn State versus Ohio State on Saturday the 21st. You do not want to miss it. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And of course, let us know what you think of the show on Twitter @TheKing1 and @TomHannafin. State of State is presented by Bet Online.